I was thinking about how often dreams play a part in Joseph's story. You know, he has those initial dreams, which his brothers don't enjoy, where they're kind of bowing down to him. And then he has that portion where he's helping the baker and the butler interpret their dreams. And now he has Pharaoh's dreams to help with. I was reminded that in seminary I took a class on dreams. And the professor's name was Jeremy Taylor. He's written several books about dream work. And I brought one here this morning with me. His class was so interesting. He immediately presented a temptation because he said, anybody who is already enrolled in my class is getting an A. So come or don't come, you're going to get an A. You know, this is his policy. He really wanted people just to be there because they were really interested, you know. And he didn't want people showing up just because they felt they had to and kind of taking away from the spirit of the class, I think. So he has worked on dreams and dream work for a long time. And, you know, the thing about dreams is, I think, as he says, is that, you know, often in our culture we kind of think of dreams as just crazy. I mean, you know, sometimes they make sense and we can see some meaning in them. Sometimes they don't make any sense at all. Some people think what you had for dinner makes a difference in your dreams. I mean, you know, they're not always particularly regarded as a sacred part of our living. But this isn't true for a lot of cultures. And for him, he felt like any part of a dream that you can remember, even if it's just a fragment, if you will take the time to try and understand it from any angle, it has a lesson to give. And it's not always just about even our own personal enlightenment. Sometimes that lesson is about a way to help bring healing and wholeness, you know, to the world. And as I was looking over one of his books, this one I brought with me called Dream Work, I noticed he mentions, he has this area where he talks about several famous people whose dreams really changed what they brought to society. So for example, he mentions Descartes' theories. He mentioned his dream, you know, his dream life helped with this. Or the person who, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, Mendeleev, but it's the person who can, how do you say it?
Mendeleev.
Mendeleev, okay. He made the periodic table of elements, and it came from a dream that he had. Or Niels Bohr, who formulated quantum theory, had a dream of a pleasant day at the races and realized that the marked lanes on the racetrack within which the horses were required to run were like the fixed and specific orbits of electrons that are required to follow in their circulation. So, I mean, isn't that amazing? Now, there's one more story I want to share of a dream that changed someone. And he said that this is his favorite story. His name was Elias Howe, and he invented the sewing machine in 1844. Now, as the story goes, Howe, after reaching the stage of exhausted frustration in his efforts to invent a sewing machine, he fell asleep at his workbench and had a nightmare. In his dream, he was fleeing from cannibals through the African jungles. Despite his frantic efforts, he was unable to escape them. They captured him, bound him, and took him back to the village where they tossed him into a huge pot of water to cook alive. As the water began to bubble up around him, his bonds loosened and he was able to free his hands. He attempted to climb out of the pot, but each time he clambered up over the edge, the natives would reach over their flames and poke him back down into the cauldron with their sharp spears. Howe awoke from this dream in a state of some agitation, but one part of his mind was not totally absorbed in the emotions of the experience. That's odd, he remembered. All those spears have holes in their points. And as he came more fully awake, holes in the points. Holes in the points. If you think about a needle with a hole in the point, this was his answer. And it came from this dream, and, you know, as Jeremy Taylor says, the basic design of the sewing machine really hasn't changed all that much ever since. So if you think about it, next time you use a sewing machine, or you think about, you know, how sewing machines making all of our clothing these days, it all came because of someone's dream that enlightened that process. Isn't that something? Well, certainly Joseph knew about the power of dreams. And it is this connection to Pharaoh that he has, this dream that enables him to finally get out of prison. And as we have spoken about, you know, the beauty of the story in the Bible is we have an amazing story in and of itself, but also that we see deeper and deeper levels in it. And for instance, we can see that all of Joseph's brothers, and himself included, are part of ourselves. So we have this Joseph within us. And Joseph was the enlightened one. He was the dreamer. He was the most closely connected to God. He represents in us that part of us that wants the Lord's presence in our life. So, that being said, you think about those brothers totally selling him off. You can think of any time that you have pushed that kind of thought away, or that feeling. We know anytime we've been tempted to do anything, if we know it's wrong or we shouldn't, but we decide to go and do it anyway, it's like in that moment selling Joseph, right? And he is most closely connected to the Lord in his story. Another way we can think of it is because if you think he was betrayed, he was sold for a few pieces of silver, his garments were taken from him, his coat of many colors, he was thought dead. There are so many parallels we can see how he could represent that in our life. And that at times we push that away. And I think that's the most easy for me I can really understand that part. That makes sense. Sometimes we really embrace that part and we get excited about the spiritual life and we want to work on it. And sometimes we just, for whatever reason, feel like, I'd rather just do my own thing right now. But he keeps trying to rise up. And even though he's in bondage, that part still keeps trying to rise up. And we know that the Lord's presence continually is with us, trying to kind of be a part of our life. So this is a final chance here. We've finally got this chance that Joseph is not going to be in prison anymore. And anytime it says prison, the church offers us the idea that this is like a temptation. So Joseph is about to come out of this temptation time. And Pharaoh has these dreams. And what I wanted to point out a little bit here, and I hope you won't mind my drawings this morning, is that what Pharaoh represents is kind of the natural part of us, and Egypt does too. So this is kind of the idea we have in our teachings here, is that we'll just kind of have the symbol of God as the sun, and that like God's love and wisdom enters into us. So first we might say the soul, and it kind of, we could even imagine kind of like a triangle, or kind of a pyramid almost. Which is just, so we have this soul part of us, this, we might call it this organ that we are able to receive this divine love and wisdom into our life. And then as we kind of learn, this is how kind of our theory here of how this all works, is that we have an internal self and we have an external self. And this internal self has these, talk about different layers and levels of being. So in our internal, we have this celestial part of us, and we have a spiritual part of us. Now, if we're working off of this part, the celestial part, it means that our ruling love What motivates us the most is a love of God, and it is the most determining factor in all of our decision making. If we're working at the spiritual level, it means what's most important to us most of the time is loving the good in our neighbor. This external part has some different levels to it. The first is just our senses, and actually, and kind of our physical self comes under here. But part of this external self is just the senses. If we had a fire in front of us, we could tell if it was hot and the way it looked. But the minute that we can tell you how a fire works and what it's doing, he called that the middle natural. So this kind of just is a deeper understanding beyond the senses, right? How something works. And so this is, we have to have all these levels because we have to live in this world. We can't just have our head in the clouds all the time, we might say. We have to live in this world. We need a lot of knowledge about how the world works. So this is really important. But there's one other aspect to this, and he calls this the rational. And I kind of point out this ratio part. The rational is kind of this bridge to living a deeper spiritual life. And I think since Pharaoh was in charge, he's kind of like this rational part. He's opening the door to a bridge between thinking in a different way. So we've pushed off this Joseph side of ourselves. And we're finally bringing Joseph back, but we can't really start at a super deep level. We kind of have to start in the natural. And how is it going to affect the way that we live? And he says eating those cows, eating the other cows. So this is just a natural process. It doesn't sound very fun. But what it is we have all this, we have times where we're learning a lot and it's fun and it's fulfilling. And then we're going to have times when we learn something really beautiful, say something around the Sunday school table. It isn't probably likely that we can go home and immediately put it into use. And from the moment we hear it, we can live it. We kind of have a process of having to fit it into our lives. And it just doesn't happen immediately. So it's a gradual process. But I just wanted to share. This week I was at Kohl's, and I kind of had one of those moments where I was like, "Yep, I'm still in the natural here." And I know that, but I was shopping, and Elin was getting a pair of shoes, and we were waiting in line, and there's somebody in front of us waiting, and then there's somebody right at the cashier, right, who was checking out. And sometimes this happens, when they go to open up a new line, they ask the person in the back of the line if they want to come over and, go ahead and take care of them. Well, there's this person in front who has yet to be helped. Well, she comes around and she asks me if I want to just go over to this register, and she'll go ahead and take care of me. And I just had this moment, because I've thought of this before, like it isn't right that the person who's been waiting longer has to wait longer, right? So I had this moment where I thought, ooh, it would be nice to get out of here sooner, right? And I could feel it, like it was this is a very natural level of temptation, but I could feel it inside, like, should I just take her offer? Or should I ask this guy over here, because I know he's really up next and should have it, and I could feel that. And all of a sudden I thought, no, I need to ask him, So I did. I said, you can come over here. But all of a sudden then it's like you move out of that temptation. The minute you say, okay, I'm not going to listen to that, I'm going to do the right thing. And that is that, when Joseph was called out of prison, it was like he hastily was brought up. And that's like when you finally decide you're going to listen to that spiritual part. You're going to have that be your ruler instead of just what you want in your own, whatever's easiest for you. Joseph hastily comes up out of the prison cell. And that was what my experience was like. As soon as I said, okay, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to ask this guy. It was like, and then it was over, in just a moment. And I thought, that's kind of how it works, I think. And it's a gradual process. I was hoping I wouldn't, it would just be like, why don't you just ask him first? And I wouldn't even think of it, But I had to think about it. So that was what I was feeling like was happening. And that's where this rational part, this Pharaoh part who's in charge, gets to decide who he's going to ask to help him and who he's going to put in charge. You get that option. what's going to be in charge and what's going to be in charge of my life. So I just want to say, as we're kind of closing up here, there's a lot to say about that dream. I won't go any further than that. There's just 3 little things I wanted to mention as we're thinking about putting Joseph in charge. One is, the earlier Joseph is in charge, the better. And that we want to support, if we can, children. They learn, this is in the Dole Nuts, she said, you know, children have that part where they're learning when they're younger, they're excited about learning. And the more that we can support that, the better. And I think I saw a statistic the other day that said by 3 years old, 85% of a child's brain is already formed. So that gives you something to think about. The next thing is that Christmas is coming very fast now. The ads are already on, the trees are up at the stores, it's almost Christmas time. I'm already thinking what I'm going to be buying for the kids. But this story makes me pause and think, how is Joseph going to be a part of how is that spiritual element going to be a part of our Christmas? You know, and for me, as buying things, it's really a question for me to think about what I want that to be like. You know, we have lots and plenty all year long. And the magazine came in the other day about this is Save the Children. And you can, you know, do things for other kids or adults who need help, whether it's buying chickens, whether it's mosquito nets, whether it's helping to build a school. So what I'm saying is for all of us to think about that as we approach Christmas and as a church, because we know we like to pick some family, some cause to help at the Christmas season. And finally, I was just going to say that we not only, you know, in the hard times, so we, you know, those cows shows the kind of ebb and flow, that there are easy times and then there are hard times. And it doesn't matter how wise we are never going to avoid the hard times in this life. How do we create positive experiences now that will help us later in the harder times? How have we had positive experiences in the past that are helping us now? But the point is we can still create positive experiences now. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone who has helped with these school kits, because these are going to be positive experiences for those children who are having a difficult time right now, who need something positive in their life, and hopefully that will be something they will remember when they get older, and it will be something that continues to be a positive experience and help to inspire. So I want to thank everybody who has helped with these, and we are going to try and get those off as soon as we can. And I'm sure with Hurricane Sandy, the school kit supply is really going to be down here in the United States. So thank you for all of your help, and may we all find a way of continuing to bring Joseph in charge of our life.